Good morning, my name is Andy Stevens from Eclipse Property Solutions, and today we are building an extension. We're going to take you through all the stages from planning, drawing, structural calculations and all the way through to the final coat of paint. So we are in the kitchen of this 1950s bungalow. The family of four living here have quite literally grown out of it. So we are going to be extending out the back into the garden to create an open plan kitchen dining living space. So this extension we started work on, it's the best way of explaining it's like an L shape on the back, so that we're looking at squaring off the back of the house, which means extending out about 12 foot, which will create a completely square to the back of the house, taking away the L shape. That'll involve taking out internal walls as well as the brickwork, and that will give them a lot bigger open plan kitchen dining sort of living space. So once I'd been through various options with the customer, they contacted an architect and structural engineer, which came back with a set of drawings and calculations and building regs. This was then sent to the council, because the council have to check it and make sure it meets the regulations. They then sign it off. Then all these documents are given to builders to tender, so they're all working from exactly the same drawings and plans to come back to the customer and submit a price. So once you put the documents out to tender, 2 or 3 different building contractors is usually fine. Once you're happy with the builder, get them to come back round and then go through each stage of the pricing. From the minute the digger goes in the ground, which we've got going on at the moment, all the way through to the final coat of paint when it's finished. And then once you agree everything, that's when you start putting together all the contracts, etc. A recognised decent building contractor will have quite a lot of paperwork before work starts, so both sides have got everything in writing. As we mentioned, we've got the drawings which are to scale, we've got the building regs, and we've also got the structural engineer's report which spec the steel. Once that's all agreed, what I do, and I'm sure many others do it, I send a pack, so everything's very clear. There's a cover letter just explaining everything that's in the pack. You then have a defects liability document which explains how long that's for, what you'll come back to adjust if there's any movement, any socket faults or anything like that, and more importantly what isn't covered. We price things electrically per item because it's a lot fairer, I feel. If you have an electrician that comes in and charges on an hourly rate and he's got to chase through a 4-inch concrete slab on the floor, it's going to get expensive. Whereas if it's just a fixed price, everybody from both sides totals it up as we go along. So I think that's the fairest way. A really important one is the schedule of works. It can be done in Excel or anything, but you've got your week numbers at the top with the date, then you've got all the different specs of work. So the first one is set up site, take delivery of skip, plant hire, cover the drive, and then the final bit is complete snagging, clear up job, and finish everything, leave clean and tidy. So the customer can see what's happening when. On top of this, I actually send an email at the end of each week explaining not just what we've done, but what we're doing the following week, so they know who to expect, and also they can see on here that within a certain week, things such as kitchen and flooring needs to be on site. And then second to last document is the payment schedule. There's 2 ways of doing this. They're stage payments, when you finish your brickwork, when the roof's on, etc. Personally, I don't like that, and the reason for that is if you get to 2 courses before the plate goes on for the roof and you have a month of rain, personally I've got to pay everybody or myself, whoever's doing it, to do that work, and the customer's not paid because we've got 2 courses short because of the weather. So what I do is weekly instalments, so there's a deposit. The job on this one is running for 10 weeks, so each Friday will be the same amount, and the customer keeps a retention amount, a small percentage, and that's payable once completion of snagging is done, you know, touching up any paintwork, etc. And then finally, I think the most important thing is obviously the contract, just in case anything goes wrong from either side. There's JCT, there's FMB, and all of these are fairly straightforward. Both sides have one signed by both parties, so if there's any disagreement or uncertainty, it's all in black and white to save any confusion. So insurance is always mentioned before we start work. It needs to be covered on both sides, and the first thing I'd say is any contractor without insurance, you're taking a risk. Because if we prop the back of the house, something happens and the house collapses and we haven't got insurance, it's down to us to pay out of our own pocket. So I think companies without public liability insurance You can get policies for a small amount up to several million. My policy is up to 2 million, which will generally cover rebuilding most houses we work on, and that insurance also covers if heaven forbid something bad happens and you've got to move out into a let or a hotel, that will cover that. I also have employer's liability, which means if one of the lads does something, hits a water main, trips out the electrics, which needs a lot of extra work, if I don't cover that, my insurance will. The other thing is worth bearing in mind as the client is to tell your insurance company you're having works done. It generally doesn't add much to the cost, but it informs them, but potentially you could have some areas maybe not as secure as others. And as I say, they don't generally add money, but it keeps the insurance company up to date if somebody broke in and stole your TV or tools or whatever. So insurance is important. Public liability and employer's liability from the contractor, and worth notifying your insurance company that you're actually having work done from the date you start approximately for the duration of the job. Once you receive all the architect's drawings, you will always get the building regulations. Now for self-builders, this is a brilliant go-to sheet, cheat sheet, whatever you want to call it. The reason for that is this is checked by the council to make sure that you're building to the latest regs to achieve the latest U values, etc. So this is one of the sheets on the job we're on. And if you're not sure of the makeup, let's take as an example, the floor. The new floor in the extension, if you're uncertain of this, this is a complete breakdown as a cross section. So you can see on the bottom, you've got your 4 inches of hardcore, and you go up to your screed and your damp and your insulation. So what we'll do throughout the build is come back to these to make sure that we're building to meet the latest regs and U values that the council want to see.